Today on the Topping Show, a city in Idaho might change their official city flag to be the pride flag in order to keep it up. You also have Hyundai setting a new record as their car sales go to the moon. Scout Harvester to be made in Mexico. A Minnesotan restaurant owner is robbed by a man who had 50 priors and goes viral on social media. And Kubota Tractors are being recalled. Well, in this case, they're RTV. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Guys, he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, still giving away a free Flamethrower with every IT purchase with Picatinny rail adapter, so you can mount it to any standard AR-15 like all awesome accessories can be. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the Flamethrower button to learn more and see me shoot a flamethrower. And lastly, trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you can click that button and tell your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. Now going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Hyundai hitting a new sales record, while others are crashing and burning amid the tariff and the trade wars. Now this is brought to us thanks to Motor1.com, specifically Chris Smith over there, one of their top writers, at least I think so, in which he says, quote, "What tariffs? Hyundai Group just set another sales record. Can anything stop Hyundai and Kia from selling their cars hand over fist?" Which, yeah, fun fact of the day, if you didn't already know, same company, just like how Toyota owns Lexus and Honda owns Acura, what have you, Hyundai and Kia are in fact the same company, which is why so many of their vehicles look oddly familiar. And here you can see one of their, well, in my opinion, bland, boring SUVs, though. I do appreciate the fact that for many years they did make many SUVs with a stick shift, which was a fun, unique thing at the time. Now, they say, quote, "Tariffs on vehicles built outside the United States are in effect, but you wouldn't know it by looking at the latest sales figures from Hyundai Group. Hyundai and Kia both clocked in yet another record sales month. Wow, each brand posting double-digit gains over last year, which is insane. Funny enough, I've never seen that weird-ass looking SUV that they have pictured there. Let me scroll down. I have seen those behemoths on the road. It looks like an SUV and a Dodge minivan had an abomination of a child. I can't help but see more and more of those things on the road. Not for me, but I understand someone who has mass transit needs and needs to throw a whole family in there uncomfortably and feels dead inside because it has two pedals and can't really have fun driving it. But I understand that there's a market for it, of course. Now they say, quote, "Hyundai did the best, geez Louise, with a 19% year-over-year increase. The company sold 81,503 vehicles, led by the Tuscan at 22,054 vehicles. At that rate, the SUV will surpass last year's sales performance and could break into the top 10 best-selling vehicles in America. Percentage-wise, the Tuscan was the company's best performer with a 41% increase in sales. Second came in at 30%. The Elantra, proving once again sedans are far from dead." Yeah, yet another business blunder. Ford's deciding to make no more sedans. Yeah. Now, they continue saying, quote, "April sales continue to be upward trajectory with a 25% year-over-year increase in electrified vehicle sales, led by strong demand for the Tuscan HEV. This is according to Randy Parker, president and CEO of Hyundai Motor North America. And the debut of the 2026 Palisade, the seventh best-selling ever total sales record month. In April, sales came across several models, reflect our performance and momentum in leadership in innovation, value, and performance. Meanwhile, at Kia, overall sales were up 14%. For vehicles, the Carnival, which is a funny name, Telluride, another funny name, Sportage, if it sounds familiar, and the K4 set individual records for April sales. The most popular Kia was the Sportage, which found 16,178 buyers for the month. The K4 was a close second at 13,097 units, which, well, sad they don't have the pictures of the vehicles there, but nevertheless. They also know that going by percentages, the Carnival, wow, whipped all the others with a 79% jump. That's insane. Hyundai notes the addition of the Carnival Hybrid trim was a major factor in the sales increase. Now, Eric Watson, the vice president of sales operations for Kia America, says, quote, "Reporting sales records for 7 consecutive months has bolstered the Kia brand, and even more, we remain dedicated to further strengthening our product lineup and enhancing customer satisfaction through ongoing innovation." Which, yeah, I mean, he's going to say, to me, what I know Kia and Hyundai for, which thanks to the Germans are fixed. I only partially kid. Decades ago, some German executives left Volkswagen Group and went over to Kia Hyundai, and they revolutionized the brand, made a lot of the, at the time, things like heated seats were by no means standard. That's an upsell for pretty much every car company. They made them standard on most Kia and Hyundais, and they brought up the quality, so it's actually not a joke. And to this, I mean, they started back then, but to this day, they have the best powertrain warranty, bar none. I believe it's 10 years, 100,000 miles, which is insanely good and a big selling point for a lot of people who want a car or vehicle that'll last, 10 years and 100,000 miles, whatever hits first. Again, to this day, it's the best warranty in the auto industry. And to me, a great selling point. When I was in the auto industry, geez Louise, over a decade ago, that was one of the big selling points is people love that safety of mind. And again, when things would go wrong, the company would pay for it, which is a pretty good upsell. So it's interesting to see. And again, hindsight's always 2020 when it comes to investing. I mean, in terms of EV adoption and production of battery technologies, they're one of the best ones. No, they're really not well known or not well advertised. They say that because when you talk about, financing and you look at publicly traded companies, I would have never seen, but they've had one of the best growth rates in the past 24 months. And again, not financial advice. But while other auto companies are struggling, they're doing great. And it's interesting to see them hitting their momentum. I hope they still make a couple sports cars for the gearheads like me. But let me know, anecdotally, are you seeing more of these on the road? I've noticed more of in my consideration, to me, abomination, large, ugly SUVs. But again, anecdotally in Texas, I've seen more and more of these Hyundais and Kias. But let me know, have you seen more of them? And do you think they'll keep this momentum up to become eventually one of the top dogs or top production companies in the world? Let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting business news, Scouts harvest hybrid to be made in Mexico, which it traditionally was a pretty good ROI, but now with the tariffs and the uncertainty, might cost them a pretty penny, or more accurately, a pretty peso. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Brian Hurd at The Drive. He says, quote, Scouts Harvester gasoline-powered EV range extender will be built in Mexico. The naturally aspirated four-cylinder VW engine will give the Traveler SUV and TR pickup truck 500 miles of range, which here you can see one of the Scouts there, and I was about to say all of its glory, all of its meh. At least the Force looks good in the picture. Now they say, quote, in a somewhat surprising move given the current international trade climate, Scout Motors announced it will source a gasoline engine from Volkswagen Group in Mexico to serve as the optional onboard harvester range extender, per Automotive News. VW Group CFO Arnold Anitz confirmed during the company's earnings call that harvester will be naturally aspirated four cylinders of unknown size. It'll be assembled at the company's engine plant in Cielo. I'm not intentionally trying to butcher that, though I believe I might have. They say that, quote, both the timing and choice of the venue for the announcement suggests that VW plans to stay the course despite pressure to move more operations inside the U.S. borders, especially given the recent signals from the administration that it may be abandoning many of its earlier tariff positions. Now they say, quote, we've been debating which engine might fill the role ever since the Scout CEO, Scott Hugh, confirmed the obvious by telling us that the motor would come from within the VW Group, which, again, makes sense as a VW subsidiary. A VW or Volkswagen Group owns this company. Fun fact, they also own Lamborghini, Bugatti, Ducati, Porsche, Audi. Volkswagen, hilariously, that specific brand, not doing great, but the whole portfolio, pretty well, though granted not financial advice. They continue to say, quote, our money was on a small displacement engine destined for something in the VW Group, and this amount of displacement does give us much more to go on. Silo currently builds the EA 2011 and EA 2088 lines of four-cylinder engines for the VW Group. They're distributed within North America. But that's not much of a clue. In this instance, the company's small displacement motors sold in North America are all turbocharged. Now they say that we dropped Scout Motors a note to see if we were able to learn any more details and we'll update the story if something comes to the forefront. While the response to the Harvester's range extender availability has been undeniably positive, Scout says 80% of the reservations included it. Its announcement was an about-face company that initially presented itself as a BEV-only outfit. Vehicles with Harvester add-on will get a smaller battery pack, reducing their electric range at the expense of quicker top-offs. And Cohen told media at CES this year that the engine will be far from the driver and presumably well insulated, that it won't intrude on the silence EV users come to expect, which, yeah, someone who actually likes to drive a vehicle for a living and, have three pedals, also known as manual transmission, something sad about saying, oh yeah, we're going to go out of our way to silence the engine so you don't hear the heartbeat. Though I understand people who buy EVs don't want to hear fun noises like engines just sounding like a magnificent symphony. Granted, again, I'm not their target audience. But yeah, it's interesting, with all the tariffs, all the companies that are onshoring jobs, don't have new factories. Again, I think this is the downside or perhaps a trade-off when you have short relatively short administrations when it comes to the longevity of businesses, which have been around for 100 years. I think a lot of these companies are looking at the trade-offs of if we invest, billions of dollars in plants now, whoever might be president next, may the tariffs go away, and financially it makes more sense yet again not to have them here because you got to worry about lawsuits, increased cost of labor, emissions, and a whole bunch of myriad of other things when you produce in the United States. And right now they're looking at this current vehicle and they're deciding, you know what, fiscally it makes more sense. We're just gonna go with Mexico. And let me know, do you think this is a good move for the company? Do you think the average consumer will even care? And how might will this impact the price to the consumer as well? Let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the Cultural Problem Podcast, you have a Minnesota restaurant owner robbed by a man with over 50 prior arrests. The culture of Minnesota, which ironically, kind of funny. People think it's a nice, peaceful state where people help each other out. They talk funny. They have maple syrup hockey. And what else? What is Minnesota known for? Maple syrup, hockey, cold, University of Minnesota, 3M. That's all Minnesota's known for. I'm only partially kidding, but when I think of 3M, those are kind of the top things. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Libs at TikTok, in which she says, quote, a restaurant owner in Minneapolis was robbed by a man with 50 prior arrests. After the thief's arrest, he was released from custody and robbed the owner's restaurant again. That is how Tim Walz treats criminals in his state. They're just set free, which, again, you get what you vote for. People in Minnesota love this. You look at Minnesota historically, they've been voting for the same thing for decades. I don't suspect it'll change anytime soon. Though, again, perhaps this restaurant owner voted differently. Most small businesses aren't really keen on high taxes and crime. Now, let me pull this up really quick here. This is credited to Fox News, which somehow is still in business. I'm still shocked that Fox is viable as a product, but without too much further ado.
Listen, we had a guy that robbed the Gnome. He had 50 prior arrests. He robbed me, got out of jail, came back, burglarized me again a few days later, came back a couple weeks later, and did it again. This is madness. The fact that our governor, our mayor, our city council, our DA isn't standing with these business owners and standing out on the street corner and just saying, it's enough. We're done. My son's daycare last year, we had to move his daycare. A car was stolen. It was flipped just a few feet from where the kids are playing outside on the playground. And the kids get a little slap on the wrist and they get back out and they go do it again. It is maddening that our city officials are not standing on every corner going, we're done, common sense is coming back, and we're going to hold people accountable. Listen, we had a guy that robbed
Which, yeah, it'll be one of the things where will they ever be actually held accountable? I'm just a little pessimistic. This thing goes as far as I thought it should, maybe because people are just so used to Minnesota being a third world hellhole by now. I was going to say they also conquered weak state. Their state flag, which used to be a beautiful historical flag, been around for almost 100 years plus, it was replaced by a rudimentary design that looks like the one of Somalia since they imported so many Somalians there. Now, they only got 130,000 views and 9.5 thousand likes, with one of the first comments come to us thanks to Paul Zupa saying, quote, Tim Walz needs to be locked up for dereliction of duty, gained 38 likes, which, I don't know what he does all day, but certainly isn't helping the average taxpayer or average law-abiding citizen. The undercurrent says, quote, 50 arrests and still walking free. At this point, Minnesota isn't enforcing laws. They're running a rewards program for criminals, getting 48 likes, which, 58 likes, going up like a stock. And I do purposely mispronounce the state. It's a slight to them. And production says Tampon Tim is useless and his policies are moronic. And it's a quote from Tim Walz where he said, I became friends with school shooters, getting 8 likes, which, yeah, he did say that. Mentally vacuous, and he probably misspoke. Yep. You also have Cigar Marine saying POS, and it's a little bit made they're doing with the action figures. It says Tampon Tim. You got Tim Walz with tampons, the Chinese flag, and Elmer Fudd. Getting 4 likes, which, he claimed he was a gun owner. Then he didn't know how to load his own gun when it jammed. He didn't know how to troubleshoot it, which it was a standard shotgun, which anyone with a modicum of intelligence would know how to properly troubleshoot it when something goes wrong. Going down more and more, you have Trump World says his wife literally says she kept the windows open because they enjoyed the smell of businesses burning to the ground during the George Floyd terrorist riots. Getting 14 likes, which, Tim Walz's wife said that. She's weird. Desiree says 50 prior arrest, robs a business, gets released, robs it again. This is state-sponsored crime. Tim Walz is running a revolving door for thugs, getting 85 likes. Yep. Ethan Cole says, geez, imagine that if that loser and cackling Kamala won the election, the country would be in ruins, getting 12 likes. Yep. Johnny E says, imagine if the clown Tim Walz was second in line for presidency. We dodged a nuke last November, getting 15 likes. No one's sticking up for Tim yet. Maga Soup Mario says it's insane to see that how ignorant Tim Walz is. This is BS. This business owner needs to arm themselves getting 5 likes. Now, the issue with that is they probably put the business owner in jail for decades. If you were to, I would argue, use his God-given right to defend himself and his family, especially if he actually feels like his life is being threatened. I'm not sure how this robber was, doing the crimes in terms of what kind of force he was using. But yeah, in modern society, especially in Minnesota, they would punish the good guy worse than the bad guy. As we've seen here, the bad guy's not being punished. It's being letting out time and time again. Brooklyn Patriot also says source judges, getting 6 likes. Matt Walt says, if it weren't true, you would say this is crazy. I don't understand liberal logic, getting 5 likes. Well, they argue it's compassion. You can't have bail. It's evil. You gotta just let them out. So, more evidence. Minnesota's continue to crumble down and culturally just decay. And again, I'm not sure if they'll ever vote differently or maybe crime will be better. I mean, they say Chicago will get better like Chicago Bears, but let's be honest, that's not happening because every year it gets worse and worse. And I can't think a lot of parallels with Minnesota and Minneapolis. But let me know in the comments because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the political part podcast, you have Idaho wanting to change their state, or rather the city flag, to the pride flag so they can technically keep it up. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Lives at TikTok, in which she says, quote, "New, the Boise City Council is reportedly considering a resolution to make the pride flag an quote-unquote official city flag in order to circumvent Idaho's state law, which only allows the display of local, state, and federal flags. This comes after Boise Mayor Lauren McLean publicly announced that she would be defying the state's flag law. Democrats are desperate to promote LGBTQ propaganda to your children." And not to say, of course, but yeah, it turns out, liberal white gal who's pushing for this. Though, fascinatingly enough, no short blue or purple hair or cow ring. So she is missing some of the telltale signs of leftism. And this one pretty valid. Got 175,000 views and 2.6 thousand likes. One of the first comments come to us thanks to Paul Zupa saying, quote, "Defund Idaho if this happens," getting 61 likes. Steve Gruber says, "Why are they always so desperate for gay flags?" getting 19 likes, which a handsome man did respond. Well, bias is me, the Topping Show. I say, "Too many it seems to have become a religion and ideology and an identity," getting 2 likes, which I'm a little biased, but I think that's correct. The Undercurrent says, quote, "When the law says only official flags and the response is, okay, we'll just make it official, you're not witnessing governance, you're watching ideological vandalism in a pantsuit." Getting 318 likes. Yep. Mr. Pitbull, though I don't think it's the actual singer, unless he has a lot of time in his hands these days to tweet. Maybe he does. I don't think he's had hit in a while. Now, he says, quote, "Teachers then versus teachers now." It says teachers when I was a kid, and they're all dressed up very traditional and covering up their private parts because they're private. And it says, "I hope everyone had a good recess. It's time for math." They have, teachers now with, short, creepy hair, nose rings like the cow, and showing their body. And it says, "Whiteness is a privilege. Now, who's ready to hear about my sexuality?" getting 139 likes. And, another creepy thing with teachers talking to kids about inappropriate things. Seems to be most of their job these days. Hermit says, quote, "What is the obsession with this? I just assume it's getting paid," getting 79 likes. Maybe. Julio Mariano says, quote, "Why are they so desperate to make their city gay? I honestly don't get it," getting 113 likes. Lauren says, "If anyone from this administration is seen, please end federal funding to Boise," getting 87 likes. Atlas Will Shrug says, quote, "What the heck is happening to Idaho? I thought they were solid," getting 38 likes. I mean, even a lot of states that you think are quote unquote solid, a lot of states are red, but if you look at the actual shitties, the cities are quite blue. Even in Texas, I think the biggest outlier of Texas being, Austin, extremely deep blue. I mean, I don't know what it would take for them to actually vote Libertarian or Republican. You also have Risha ID saying, quote, "Boise mayor is a coward who doesn't represent the majority of Idahoans," which that is a new word. I mean, it makes sense, but have you ever heard that before? Idahoans? It makes sense, but that's a fun word of the day. And she knows it. That's why she refuses to respond to anyone who questions her. She forgot who she works for, getting 44 likes. You also have Ruby Tubi saying Boise must have nothing to do with their time, getting 29 likes. Nathan Moore says Boise is more Californian than Idahoan these days. Wouldn't be surprised if this passed. The mayor is Boston-born, Notre Dame educated Democrat, by the way, getting 51 likes. Nate says, and Democrats wonder why their approval rating is lower than ass cancer. Jesus, getting 74 likes. Political Doggo? It says it's a cult, and it's the picture of White House when Biden was in charge. Well, more accurately, his handlers were. And it had the pride flag, or the trans pride progress flag, in the middle, then the United States flags juxtapositioned on the left and right, getting 7 likes. Yeah, make a post saying the pride flag should be banned, not waved. Am I right? Getting 48 likes. Which again, back in the day, the purpose of the flag was to unite all of us, not just a subsection. That's why you have the United States flag. And fascinatingly enough, that's become a political issue where now you actually can probably accurately guess who someone voted for by the fact if they have the United States flag in front of their house or not. It says that was one of the dumbest political moves Democrats did in decades in terms of giving up on the American flag and saying, oh yeah, it's an evil flag, we do something else. It'll be interesting to see if this actually, they actually do pass it, like you fly that flag with the technicality. And then do you think Trump will actually do anything about this with all his priorities? Do you think he's going to care? Let me know the thoughts and comments though, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now going over to the business blunder of the day, you have the Kubota Tractor Company recalling their RTV whoopsie daisies, which is not great for a tractor company where their products cost more than a house. Now, this brought to us thanks to the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission, perhaps the only useful government website, which, well, granted, it's a low bar, but still, in which they say, quote, Kubota Tractor Corporation recalls RTV-Series utility vehicles due to a crash hazard. Here you can see one of the fancy Kubota RTVs right there, which I was going to say probably costs more than my Honda. Well, it does. That's kind of sad, but it makes sense because a lot of people buy it as farm equipment and a business expense, but still. Now, they note that, quote, the ball joint connected to the front suspension arm can loosen and separate from the front suspension arm, resulting in the driver losing wheel support of the utility vehicle, posing a crash and hazard to consumers. Whoops. And this affected about 49,640 units. Ouch. It's going to cost a pretty penny to repair. Now, they note that the model numbers include the RTV 520, RTV X1120, the X11 3040, RTV X, X900, and the X1100C. And I'll pull it up really quick here. Unfortunately, they were not ahead of this recall, so to say. They note that the firm has received 4 reports of loosened or separated ball joints. However, thankfully, no serious injuries have been reported. They note that consumers should immediately stop using the recalled utility vehicles and contact authorized Kubota Tractor dealers to schedule a free inspection and repair at the dealer's location. They're also contacting all registered owners directly. Now, it's bad, but it's also worse when you consider they were sold nationwide between January 2021 and December 2024 between $11,000 and $27,000. So it literally is worth more than my Honda, an actual car. And the issue with this is the multiplier effect or the domino effect. Kubota, again, they make this fun thing, but they're really known for their large agricultural machinery and their tractors. That's really the bread and butter. And if you're a farm owner and this is one of your toys and it's broken, or it's a daily utility vehicle and it's broken, are you going to maybe second guess if you're going to buy one of their larger, more expensive vehicles that cost more than a house? Maybe look at the competitors, maybe like Case New Holland, maybe John Deere. Again, there are a couple of competitors out there. So it's not just the fact that, we have this car expensive vehicle, but it could have a domino effect and start having the owners second guess, should we look at their other things? Again, thankfully no one got hurt from this, but still being recalled and, I think owners will be a little bit more irate that this car on wheels, this car expensive thing is being recalled and they got to go to the dealership and deal with all that. And now I think maybe the tractor sales will even be affected. So I gotta say, Kubota, you are certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Again, trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you can click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a comment. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.